Fixing relationships is not easy and it's not intuitive. To fix a relationship is a learned skill. So we're talking about relationships, so let me kind of like do this to set the tone for you. A few years ago, I'll say several years ago, I found myself sitting around a table in a cafe with a friend and someone that's trying to counsel us because of the fact that we had just kind of hit this impasse and we saw things a different way, and we've tried so hard to try and figure it out. It's getting worse. And anyway, we're sitting there and it's so broken. It's so broken. He's angry, I'm angry, he's hurt, I'm hurt, and we're completely stuck. And I'm so frustrated. And here's the reason why we were stuck. It's because he saw things his way. He saw things his way. But me, I saw things the right way. And that was the problem. And I couldn't get him to understand that his way was wrong and my way was right. So I couldn't get him to understand this, and I got so frustrated. And I'm thinking there with this counselor, if you would just see things my way, we'll be on our way. We'll be good. It'll all be good. It'll all be over. Everything will be fine. If you could just see it my way. Why can't you see it my way? Now, I can see some of you out there are kind of smiling a little bit, because you're actually just that statement that you're thinking to it. Thank goodness. Finally, someone understands what I go through with the relationships in my world all the time. And at last, I'm going to get some answers. Isn't that right? Get some answers on how to fix relationships. Relationships are complex. They're complex. And I think if you would think about your relationships, the ones in your family or friends or work or things like that, sometimes they get a little bit broken, they get a bit twitchy, and they get a little bit awkward, and you get frustrated, and you're exactly the same thing. You're just saying the same thing. If you just see things my way, everything would be all okay. If you just see it my way, why can't you see it my way? And that's where all the trouble comes from. So, because I know this is such an important message for us, and we're all working through this, and we've all got this looming question in the back of our mind, and that is this, we're going to try and address it, is what is wrong with these people? What is wrong with these people in our world? Why can't they just see things the way that we see things? Do I need to change this mic? Why don't they see things the way that we see things? Maybe the series should probably be called How to Get People to See Things Your Way. Maybe we should have called it that. And the subtitle could be, because your way is the right way. Because until they get on the right way with you, they're going to be forever messing things up. They're going to mess up the family. They're going to mess up another Christmas thing where you've got to all get together, and they're going to be there and they're going to muck it all up. So on the next few weeks, we're going to help you understand how to deal with this and how to get some breakthrough on this. And what we're going to share here right at the start, it'll work on anyone. It'll work on your 9th grader that's failing in biology. You just got to get around them and just say, listen, you need to pass biology really well. You've got to get an A, because if you get an A, then you get better options to go into university, and then you get a better job. And if you get a better job, you make more money. And then you make more money, you become more wealthy. And then at the end, you're going to look after me. You're going to learn how to do that. You're going to learn how to make that kind of switch, and you'll learn how to, maybe you've got this situation, maybe mum or mother-in-law walks in and they just kind of look around everything, and they kind of, you get judging everything. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's very unclean, isn't it? We're going to teach you out of this series. You'll learn to convince mum or your mother-in-law to knock it off. Just stop it, so we can have you over more often. You're going to have that awkward relationship, your brother-in-law or something like that you had a fight with or something like that, and now you don't talk to each other and it's just weird. This, what I'm going to show you now, will teach you how to convince him that he's wrong and you're right, and this will, there you go. So let's jump in. Because really the thing about this is you got to get him to see things your way. That's the main thing. And if you can get them to apologize on the way, that's even better. So if you can work out how to do that, get the apology out, that is really good. So anyway, Pastor Andy Stanley came up with this coin phrase, the C4 approach to relationship management. Now, of course, if you're aware of anything to do with C4, it's actually a form of plastic explosive as well, so it's very volatile. But he said, this is the way. If you can master this, you'll teach people how to come towards you, get on your plane and get with you in the process. And so these are the 4 things that you have to master if you're going to do that. Here they are. You've got to convince them. You've got to convict them. You've got to coerce them. And you've got to control them. Now, you probably need to say that out loud because these are really important. So, you convince them, convict them, coerce them, and control them. They're the essentials that you need to work out how to manage good relationships. And seriously, if you have any doubts about this, this is the way the whole world system works. If you have any doubts, I want you just to think back over the last season of our nation and how these kind of qualities work so well to bring us together around our election time. You know, it was so uplifting and encouraging and bringing us all together. So, this is a very important approach, this C4 approach. But if you're still not sure, I'm so grateful to Andy. He's such an amazing man. He got some of his people to share just how this C4 approach, when you really embrace it, really works. So just have a look at this for a minute.
The C4 approach to relationship management has completely turned our marriage around.
Absolutely. So close to just failing, you know? All 4 C's are complete game changers. Convince, coerce, convict, and control. If there was a 5th C, it'd be cool.
6 months ago, I was gonna take a week and a half off for my wedding and honeymoon. The day before I headed out to the resort, Lisa told me that she needed a pitch deck done in a day and a half. And what did I say? You said, looks like you'll need to postpone that wedding. I'm single now.
My relationship with my son has always been very interesting. He loves acting, but I love football. He's my son, he lives in my house, so he should be playing my favorite sport. The C4 approach to relationships understands that and helps me call all the right plays.
I can't wait to try on my costume.
Uniform.
And then go to my audition.
Tryouts. Hey, what do you do when you score?
You bow.
Spike it, son. You spike it. Hut, hut, hut.
Check out the C4 approach to relationships ASAP. You'll learn things like how to shame journal.
I started a shame journal myself, and it's just a detailed list of every time that Emily has hurt me or let me down. And now, when we have an argument, I just read her a few entries, and before you know it, she sees things my way.
I've been journaling since 8th grade. Yeah.
One word of warning about this C4 approach to relationships. And it's very important that you don't share with anybody what I'm sharing with you today. You cannot afford to let the other people know about this, because this is going to sound crazy. As irrational as this sounds to you, they are convinced that you are the problem. They're convinced you're the problem. So you don't want to let this information get into their hands, or they'll start using it on you, and you'll start moving towards them, and then you'll start changing, and they'll be getting their way. So you don't want to, just whatever you do, don't let this get out, okay? Don't let it get out of the way. So what you got to do is you've got to convince. You got to convince. You can always tell when someone's convincing you. They say a lot of words. And they keep going over it, and they go over it, and they go over it, and over it. If that doesn't work, then they've got to find a bit of conviction in there. So you've got to get a little bit of guilt and a little bit of shame in there, somewhere in the way to help it along. If that doesn't work, you've got to coerce and try and strong-arm the situation, and then eventually you just got to control it. Whatever you got to do to control it, you got to control it. Now, those things, When you experience those things, don't they make you feel like you want to engage in the relationship and you want to draw close and you want to come in? No, they don't work. They don't work. They don't work. However, they are the 4 things that most of us resort to when a relationship starts to break. When it starts to break, they're what we default to. That's the way the whole world operates. We go back there. And if we can't affect change with any of that, we tend to usually tell ourselves, well, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. Don't care anymore. You go off and do your own thing. You'd think that fixing a relationship would be simple, but it isn't. It isn't simple. It's not simple, it's not intuitive. So that's why we got the real name of the series, which is Reassembly, a beginner's guide to restoring relationships. So across this series, we're going to teach you 4 decisions that you're going to have to make in order to begin the process of reconciliation and restoration. We'll talk about the first one next week, but I'm just going to lay a bit of a foundation and just have some fun this week. So your relationships, our approach to relationships is kind of like our cars. We're pretty good at starting them. We're not bad at driving them. We're completely useless at fixing them. And that's kind of how it is. Relationships are the same. It's intuitive to start them. Something goes on there, your heart's together, there's a little thing going on. It's kind of intuitive in the start. And then it's fairly intuitive to manage while things are just going nicely along. But when it breaks, when it comes to fixing one, it's just not intuitive to us. And so because it's not intuitive to us, well, how do I fix this thing that I know is broken, that's not right, that you don't know what to do? So what do? You lean back to C4. And you think, well, I guess I got to convince them to see my side of the story. And I got to put a little bit of shame there, make sure they get a bit convicted, coerce them a little, and then, everything will be happy. It's the default model that we have within us. It's the way the whole world operates. And because it's not intuitive to fix, when we get under pressure, you will default to one of these, and start to swing it around. Now, to give you a couple examples of this, and these are a couple of phrases you probably want to completely eradicate from your repertoire of conversation. Because you think that when you bring these things out, it's a really good thing and you're a legend. But that's not what they hear, and it actually causes problems. So here's the first one. I'm sorry if I offended you. I'm sorry if I offended you. But that translates to, you're too easily offended. What's the matter with you? You're too easily offended. What I said wouldn't offend anybody else, people, but you're offended by it. So, you've got to be careful with that. I'm sorry if I offended you. You're just too sensitive. You're just too sensitive. I'm like, everybody I know wouldn't be offended by what I said, but obviously it's offended you, so I guess the problem's not me. The problem is you. By saying that, you actually insult them. Because you actually say to them, well, most people wouldn't be offended by that, but I guess you're not most people. You're well below most people. Because you're offended by this. But hey, I'm sorry if I offended you. It's a classic one. But we feel like, look at me. I'm being the big person here. I'm sorry if I offended you, Josh. Very sorry. I moved towards you. I've said I'm sorry. But Josh can tell he's not sorry at all. He's belittling me. He's just making out like I'm dumb or something like that. That's not right. So therefore, oh man, no one else would take that. I'm sorry if I offended you, mate. You're a bit sensitive, That whole new age kind of person, That's the first one. Don't write that one out. Take that one away. Oh, and this next one? Every husband is going to squirm at this. I said I'm sorry. Why are you still upset? I said I'm sorry. Why are you still upset? What that translates to is, I've done my part. You should be fine. And now since you're not fine, clearly there's something wrong with you. I'm sorry. I don't know why you're still upset. I know I said that really offended your mum and dad. I know I made some comments that maybe humiliated you, embarrassed you, but hey, listen, I said I'm sorry. It doesn't matter what I've said or what I've done. Once I've said I'm sorry, you shouldn't be upset anymore. I know I committed adultery, but why are you still upset? I said I'm sorry. I've done my part. You should do your part. Forgive me and we'll carry on. What's wrong with you? They are two, believe it or not, two statements and things like that outwork that we think we're doing the right thing, and it completely alienates and does the complete opposite effect. And they are embedded in the 4 C's because you're trying to control the environment. Now, you guys that are here that are married, you should go take that one home and say, mate, that was worth coming today. I just figured out what I'm doing wrong. I can save myself a lot of pain now, right now. Fixing relationships is not easy and it's not intuitive. To fix a relationship is a learned skill. You have to actually learn about it. And most of us never have learned it. Most of us have never been taught it. Most of us haven't even seen it. Think about your relationship growing up with your mum and dad and your family, and suddenly, you know what? Everyone's fine, and then one of the family members just disappears off the face of the earth. You don't know why as a kid. Why did Uncle Bob stop coming around? And then all of a sudden you get a bit older and you ask about Uncle Bob, and then suddenly everyone's going off their nut. It's like, oh, something went on with Uncle Bob. What happened with Uncle Bob? So then you go out and you go, find out what happened with Uncle Bob? And no one will talk to you about it. And then eventually you find out what it's about, and you go, really? Is that what happened with Uncle Bob? And so you go get Uncle Bob's story. Really? Seriously? Is that what this is all about? Surely you guys can work this out. Pick up the phone, have a coffee, do something. This is driving everybody nuts. If you don't work this out with other Uncle Bob, every holiday is going to be the same. We're going to have to do the avoidance dance. You know the avoidance dance where you've just got to keep making sure that they go, hey, I think they're going left around the lounge room. I think I'll duck out to the carport. You just got to keep doing the avoidance thing. And then it goes to Christmas time, and it's like, we're all getting together for Christmas. Oh, we're all getting together for Christmas. And you got to ring up and go, oh, hi, Mum. When's Uncle Bob coming? Oh, he can't get there till Friday. Oh, Friday. Oh, yeah, right. What time? In the afternoon, yeah. And he has to leave early. He can't be after lunchtime Saturday. Oh, that's such a shame. We're going to miss him. We can't get there till Saturday night. Give our love to Uncle Bob. You got to do this whole avoidance thing. It's terrible. It's terrible. And then you know what happens? One day, something happens and somebody gets sick, or somebody gets injured, or somebody dies. And you're forced into proximity. You can avoid them at the wedding, you can avoid them at the graduation, but in this environment you can't avoid. And then you actually begin to close the gap between the offense, and then you actually have to step in closer, and then the more you step in there, the more you realize the gap's not as big as I thought it was in my mind. And so what's going on here? And then it all kind of comes down, and you start saying the things and doing the things that you should have intuitively done at the beginning, but it's not intuitive to fix a relationship. And so what you do is you hide away. And then you're out there and you're waiting for this person to come back and apologize because it's so important. They should come back and apologize. And then what you do is then every opportunity you get, you rehearse it with someone. Ever had someone like that? They'd go over and over and they tell you the thing over and over again. And they rehearse how bad this person is, and they did this and they did that and they did that. Well, if they're the bad person, you're the better person, aren't you? Yes, well, fix it. You make the thing and fix it. Because you're the better person, obviously. But it's not intuitive. Back to my friend that I was telling you about, we had this couple of sessions and tried very hard to kind of work it out. And we were both committed at the start to say we don't want to lose another relationship over things, so we don't want to lose it. And so the person that was counseling suggested to ask us the question, what's really going on in you guys? What's really happening here? Let's go look beneath the surface. At that point in time, my friend said, I'm out. I'm gone. Why? Because for men, for us, it's terrifying to look beneath the surface about what might be driving and causing the issue. So it's terrifying. So he just left after we pleaded with him to stay and let's work it through. No, gone, I've tried to reconcile, but still no contact. But the issue is the fact it's not intuitive, and it's terrifying, and particularly terrifying for men. We do not like this topic of having to look inside and reflect that maybe what's going on in me and maybe what's happening around here has got more to do with how I grew up or more to do with something that happened and less to do with what's going on here. Perhaps there's a triggering thing that is going on. You know, I'm so proud of some of our guys doing AM33. We did the first season, and the first season is about understanding a biblical definition of manhood. But seasons 2 to 6 is where you apply it. You've got to then apply that to your life. One thing to know it. Yeah, I know it. It's not about knowing it. It's about doing it. It's about living it. And the next seasons is about opening that up. And it's like amazing to see because the first section we're in, it talks about our relationship with our dads and our mums. And it's awkward to reflect like that. But it's what you got to do. You got to stop kind of like blaming everybody else, and you got to start facing some things. So I'm going to share something with you now that's going to seem a bit of a contradiction just for a few minutes, but I want you just to bear with me because when it relates to putting adult relationships back together, it's not the same as when you put kids' relationships back together. Kids' relationship, it's over, back together, and they're gone. It's different with adults. So the goal for us is not reconciliation. That's God's goal. That's God's goal for us. He wants reconciliation. But it's not for us from our perspective getting started. Because of the fact that when something's broken, like if I got a broken iPhone or a broken chair or something like that, I have all the parts within my control in order to reconcile, reassemble, and bring it back together. When you're trying to restore a broken relationships, you never have all the parts. They never share absolutely everything, as neither do you. So reconciliation then becomes a problem. So what is it about this that we need to do? And here's a little tip for you when you are trying to reconcile. Never set a goal for another adult. Never set a goal. Never work with something, let me set a goal for you. Because a goal is an agenda. You can set a goal for yourself, don't set a goal for someone else. Because the minute you set a goal for someone else, you have an agenda, there's a third party in the room, and it kind of breaks relationships. It actually undoes what you're trying to actually do. So never set a goal. Not even for your kids or anything like that. Make them set it for themselves. Because otherwise they feel like you have an agenda. You're trying to control me. You're trying to manipulate me. And let's face it. Do you enjoy people have an agenda for you? Do you enjoy that? I can tell you, any pastor I know that meets with anybody goes, everybody seems to have an agenda for me. Yeah, it's not nice. It's not nice when you're coming with an agenda. So you've got to not set that agenda, because that agenda is your goal that you want to do to control the environment, to work things out. So you don't do that. Do you enjoy being evaluated and judged all the time and critiqued about everything? Nope, it's not nice. So what's the goal for us on our end, humanly? Our goal is that there is no regrets. That's our goal. There's no regrets. They just need to know the door is always open. The welcome mat's always out. You remove all the unnecessary obstacles possible for the connection to take place, to move towards reconciliation. Now, you might be thinking now, why are we talking about this in the church? I can understand C4 in the world and how great mess they make of it out there, but in the church, we are all following Christ and we are all perfect. I get some bad news for you. The devil has done a lot better job evangelizing the church to the world systems than we've done of evangelizing the world to Jesus' system. So that's why we're talking about it. The amount of relationships that break down inside, outside, are exactly the same. Because it's not intuitive. Because there's a servant-hearted humility response in restoring a relationship. So reconciliation, that's from God's perspective, and it's about restoring the relationship. Now, if you happen to be here and you haven't made a decision to follow Christ, then anything you're going to hear over this series, you're going to go, man, there's some fantastic practical tools, and that's okay for you. You can pick and choose and do whatever you want to do with them, because I'm not in charge of you. But those of us that profess to be followers of Christ, we're committed to step up and follow Jesus as best we can. It's not an option for us to not reconcile. It's actually part of what we're about, ministers of reconciliation. So it's not an option for us to sit in bad relationships and not do everything within our power to restore and fix and make the door open. So forgiveness is only really one half the equation. Forgiveness opens the door. It prepares your heart ready for the relationship to be restored, to move to the reconciliation side of things. It's kind of a bit sad because church leadership now has shifted a lot over the last few hundred years, and we've kind of separated them, separated forgiveness from reconciliation. They're a pigeon pair. Jesus said they go together. You can't separate them. But we've done that, and that's because it's more convenient. It's easy to forgive someone. Because you forgive someone, you do that in your time, on your grounds, and your conditions. So you basically, and you don't even have to go near them. I've forgiven them. That's it. But reconciliation, that's just downright inconvenient. It's inconvenient. It's messy. Sometimes it's unsafe. Sometimes it's unwise. But most of the time, it's just uncomfortable. So forgiveness, that's one part. But it doesn't repair a relationship. It doesn't repair it. It's what Israel was very good at. God forgives me, I forgive you. Let's go our own ways. We never have to talk to each other again. That's fine. It makes no difference. It was a very vertical relationship. As long as I'm right with God, if I'm not right with you, that's okay as long as I'm right with God. But under the new covenant with Jesus, he says, if you're not right with your neighbor, if you can't get this thing working right, if you're not right there, you can't be right with him either. So it really is a whole new paradigm. It's a whole new covenant. So forgiveness is really just a means to an end. And that end is the reconciliation. So we pray for it, and we're believing God for it, that we want to be reconciled out of this. But that's not our goal. Because if you go with that goal, you'll flip straight back into C4. How do I control and manipulate to get to that destination? Because that's what we need to do. But you don't do that. No. My goal is that I don't want anything to happen and left words unspoken or anything left there that's going to bother me for the rest of my life if something happens. So the goal for us is making sure that there are actually no regrets. I'm just going to leave you with a few words from Paul, because he talked about Jesus' Last Supper and things like that, and he said when Jesus was there, it was all about loving one another as he's loved us. So the whole premise that Paul built and started to open up and all his teaching on was that premise. The fact that, well, Jesus, how did you love us? Well, you can have a look at my life. It's all written down for you. You know, I gave everything in order to not just forgive you. I could have just forgiven you and left you over the side there, but I wanted to reconcile with you. I wanted to have a relationship with you. Now, Paul, he understood this so much because when Paul comes onto the scene in history, he hates Christians. He hates the church. He's killing them. He's beating them. And he thinks he's doing God's work. And then he has an encounter with Jesus. And everything changes. But can you imagine what kind of, in his mind, the level of torment almost, oh my gosh, the guilt and the shame. I've just been running around killing the Christians, beating them up, doing all sorts of things. And now God is forgiving me. But God didn't just forgive him and push him off to the side. No, he brought him in and he reconciled him in. He reconciled him in, and he became such a key leader within the context of the church and the movement. It's amazing. It's so unintuitive to us. So unintuitive. He goes on and writes this. He says, in your relationships with one another. He says, in your relationships with one another. Which relationships? All relationships. In all your relationships with another, have the same mindset of Christ Jesus. Have the same mindset as him. Who did what? He came into this world to restore relationships. That's what he came for, to reassemble the relationship between us and God. Forgiveness was one part. That's why he went to the cross, shed his blood for our forgiveness. But it didn't just stop there. There was a resurrection component. that you could step into. Something new had come, and he removed all the obstacles of our sin so you could step back into a relationship. And Paul is saying, you guys need to do the same thing with one another. That's what people are longing to see. Someone said to me only a couple of days ago, said, why are Christians not going to know different to anybody else? And then they come in here and they go, but this place feels different. Why? What is the deal with that? I said, because our whole aim and our whole ethos is to love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and then love our neighbor out of it. We know that we can't stand up and say we love God if we don't love people. And Jesus himself said, they will know you're my disciples by your what? Doctrine? By your theology? By your degrees? No, he said, they'll know by your love for one another. And we all know that all the broken relationships that we have got around us, it's all their fault. And I'm okay with that. It's their fault. I got some grace for that. No, but here's the deal. Even if it is all their fault, and even if they are broken and they're all this kind of thing, they're not going to get out of it themselves. The only way they're going to get out of them is you help them. So then you got to be the better person. And it doesn't matter who wins and who loses. I'm telling you, in broken relationships, everybody loses. It's like sometimes people come to me and go, oh, we're getting a divorce. I said, oh, really? Yes, but we've worked it out. But I'm going to get more than they're going to get. And this one's going to get better and this one's going to... It's like there's no winners in a divorce. There's just different degrees of losing. And I'll tell you who loses the most, the kids. But we deceive ourselves when we go back to that old C4 way of doing things. We convince ourselves of things at different times. It's Jesus. Jesus. And you even see it. Even when we had the series just come out of the Beyond Church on the parable of the kingdom. It's like amazing. Jesus so frustrated the religious leaders. Do you know what their attitude was? Here it is. Here's our little group of people, the exclusive group. You can be with us if you want to, if you'll comply to everything that's here. If you play up or something like that, or you want to leave, that's fine. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. If you have a change of heart, you can come back and there'll be some repentance and some discipline, and eventually we'll let you back inside. That was the culture that he was in. But what did Jesus do? He tells a story. He says, I got these 99 sheep. Yeah, they're really good, yeah. But I'm leaving them because there's one that's lost over here and broken, so I'm going to have to get this one. And it frustrated him. Jesus, why are you continually going and sitting with sinners? Why are you continually going down there when you should be here with the in crowd with us? Why are you continually doing that? And he said, Jesus answered them and said, it's not the healthy that need a doctor, but it's the sick. I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. All time you see us. To reassemble a relationship requires your willingness to walk in the direction of the one that needs to be reconciled. Because if they don't know Christ, they're definitely not going to make this leap. If they do know Christ and they're stuck, they're still not going to make the leap. So someone else, the better person, the bigger person, is going to have to make the leap to help restore the relationship. And you've got to remove every obstacle possible to make it happen. Here's the deal in this series. You're going to discover you can forgive from a distance, but you can't reconcile from a distance. You can forgive. Yeah, I've forgiven them. Do you want to go see them? No. Hey, they're coming over this afternoon. Oh, really? I have to go to work. So, yes, you can deal with forgiveness side of it within yourself to a degree, but it's not really dealt with unless there's reconciliation. Now, under reconciliation doesn't mean you're going to hang out and be best friends afterwards. Let me clear that up as we go into this series. Doesn't mean you're going to be pally-pally best friends and all hang out together. It means you will be able to just see each other, celebrate each other, love what God's doing in each other without having to try and change each other or run away from each other because like, oh, here they come again. And we all have people in our lives that, that you see them coming, you want to walk the other way. I know for most of you it's me, but we all have You know, we all have that. So let me just wind this up now. I'm going to ask the team to come back. Just ask you a question. What's stopping you from trying? What's stopping me from trying? Think about your relationships now and that are a bit strained, a bit broken. What is stopping you? Now, all these things are going to come up in your mind because you've gone straight to the 4 C's and you're going to justify all these kind of things, and then just put them in a little parking lot and then ask it again. What's stopping me from trying really? What's really stopping you? That counselor was so smart with us. What's going on in you? Let's talk about what's going on down inside you that this has triggered that you can't get over. What's stopping us really? And then, of course, we'll continue through this series on how to get people to see things your way. We'll try and do a little bit of that. But most of it's going to be, how do you assemble a broken relationship? How do you get it back together? How do you do that? So here's some questions that I want you just to think about as we're just out of this, because I'm just kind of like setting the platform for it. So they'll be up way back there at the moment. Which of these 4 relational tools do you reach to first when conflict arises? What's your natural first one? Which one do you go to first? I'm just going to talk a lot until eventually they just wear down and you go, whatever. Do you like to coerce a little bit? Like maybe I can just manipulate things just a little. Maybe I can shame them, a bit of conviction, or I'm just coming right out with full-on control. Which one is the one that you lean to? And then just talk to the Lord about that. Just let the Lord speak to you about that. Because that whole C4 doesn't work, hasn't worked in any time in history, and it won't work any time in the future. But if you don't develop, and this is what we're going to do over this season, if you don't develop this intuitive side to be able to restore a relationship, you'll default back to those. Second question is, do you have any friends or family members who are estranged from members of the families? From where you sit, what keeps the feud alive? What's keeping it alive from where you sit? Because sometimes you look at it and you go, seriously? Is that really why you guys haven't spoken for the last 10 years? Is that seriously the issue? Oh, yeah, but you don't understand. Yeah, you're right, I don't understand. But what is it? Because that's the thing that's breaking everything. And the final question is, if you are estranged from a friend or a family member, what's stopping you from taking steps to repair it? Because we know it's all their fault. It's all their fault. You've rehearsed it 1,000 times. But if it's all their fault, that makes you the bigger person. So what could you do to actually remove the regrets and try and restore some of those things? It's a fun series, but it's also quite a strong series. And it makes us nervous, you know. But God's ultimate thing is that He wants reconciliation. But our thing is just no regrets. You don't want to have someone pass away on you and have regrets about things you didn't get to say or things you didn't get to do or something that you allowed to hang there, which really was more about something going on in you. And I think that's what this is really going to be all about. So let me pray, and the team's just going to just sing for a minute and just let the Holy Spirit just listen to you, because I've given you a whole bunch of stuff here this morning. And then next week we'll begin to start, what are those 4 decisions you've got to make to actually make that journey of no regrets? So, Father, we just thank you. Thank you for, Lord, I just thank you for Andy Stanley and his just willingness to share what is an amazing gift on his heart and some understanding about these things that I think the Western church has struggled to understand, to be honest with you. And Lord, it's not intuitive for us. Like we're great at starting relationships, we're great at managing, but when they're broken, we just default to these old mechanisms. And so, Lord, I pray for each of us here and for everyone that's online, Lord, that we will make a commitment. You know what? I don't want to have any regrets. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong or who's the winner or who's the loser. It doesn't matter who's the bigger person, who's the one, who's the better person, who's the one that's going to make the step, create the proximity, like Jesus said. Go after the one that's lost. and help them get restored. So, Father, as we sing, would you just do something in our heart just to let us know that you understand this. This is all about you redeeming us, a broken people, separated from you. You could have just forgave us and carried on and started again, but you said, no, I'm not just going to forgive you. I'm going to provide the mechanism through Christ by which you can come back into a personal relationship with me. So, Lord, teach us how we do that with each other as well. In Jesus' name.